Welcome to the Lovers Lounge podcast, where we talk to experts and other guests on topics related to love, relationships, and sex. I am your host, Tina Love, and on this episode, I'll tell you, we are talking to educator, speaker, and author Joan Price. Now get this, Joan calls herself an advocate for ageless sexuality. She has been called other things by the media, quote unquote, senior sexpert, the woman leading a sex revolution for seniors, and her favorite, wrinkly sex kitten. She is an author of 4 noteworthy books about sex and aging, including the award-winning Naked at Our Age, Talking Out Loud About Senior Sex, and her latest, Sex After Grief, Navigating Your Sexuality After Losing Your Beloved. Joan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tina. So glad to be talking to you.
I know. I am so glad to talk with you too. I am so very excited to have you on the show to talk about you, to talk about your books and everything. We're going to break this interview up into 2 parts. So we're going to talk on this episode about sex, and then we're going to do part 2, and that's when we'll talk about your book, Sex After Grief, Navigating Your Sexuality After Losing Your Beloved. So great. Well, Joan, I introduced you and I said a little bit about you, but there's more to you than that. So you have a blog and you also write articles and you have a website. So tell us a little bit more about you, your blog, and what you do as far as writing and stuff.
The way I put it sometimes is I talk out loud about senior sex. I do that through my writing, which includes articles, books, my blog. All of these you can find at joanprice.com. And I also give talks really around the world at times, and certainly across the United States. Right now, doing that from home, and I have webinars. I am talking out loud about senior sex because when I started doing this 15 years ago, people weren't doing it.
Yeah.
People were not talking out loud about older age sexuality. Seniors were seen as either asexual, like all right, the time has run out, no longer sexual,
right.
Turn our attention to other things, or for those who were still interested in sex and desirous of sex and sexually active, we were seen as pathetic or ludicrous. We were told, act your age, whatever that means.
Right.
So I wanted to just break through all of that and normalize senior sex, give good information about it so that if people were facing challenges, they knew there were solutions and knew where to find them.
Yeah. Well,
So
Joan,
that's what I do.
yeah, I'll tell you. Okay. So I have to confess, Joan. So I'm not going to lie. I mean, I was really, really surprised, but delighted to learn about you. I think you're fantastic, and I'll tell you why. So you're over 60 years old, and it's partly what you were just
I'm
saying.
over 75 years
Over
old.
75.
I'm 76.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, I thought, a lot of times, and this is just me, this is just my opinion, this is just what I see in my little almost 50 years of life. Many women that I see that are your age or they look to be your age, and I could be wrong, but it's like they've kind of decided that, they've totally lost interest in sex, right? So with their husbands, whether they're with a husband or a committed partner or maybe not a committed partner, but it just seems like, they reach a certain age and they kind of hang that sexuality up in the closet. Like, okay, it's expired. I'm old now. I don't have time for all that. But I love the fact that you've managed to keep your sexuality going and you're still just like vibrant about it. And so that was why I was just so happy to find out about you. So I'm so
Well,
glad.
thank
Yeah.
you, Tina.
Yes.
And I do want to respond to what you said.
Yeah.
It's okay. You don't have to be shy about admitting that because that really is how we're seen, and you're not to blame for that. And you're right that for many, especially for many women, they do feel that. They do feel, okay, I'm not enjoying sex as much. I'm not experiencing desire spontaneously. My spouse doesn't look the way he used to 40 years ago. I mean, all sorts of reasons. But there are also lots and lots of older folks who are enjoying their sexuality. And you can't tell by just looking at them walking by you on the street whether they are vibrantly sexy under the covers
Right.
or not. You know, we tend to say, "Oh, well, that old wrinkled bag can't possibly be and can't possibly be sexy, and who'd want her?" You know, that is the ageist idea that I hope you see it as an
Yes.
ageist idea that our society teaches us.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to help people unlearn that. And I said once to a reporter, "At what age do you plan to retire your sexuality?"
And what'd he say?
Hemmed and hawed and didn't have an answer. I
Okay.
said it a little more crudely. I
Right.
said, "At what age do you plan to retire your genitals?"
Right.
That was the wording I used. And he didn't have a response to that. He said, "I get your point, but still, I don't know. I hope I made him think. At least I made his listeners think."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I will again, I'll admit I was one of those, my mother, I think I told you, recently lost my dad. And so, well, that was in 2014. She lost my dad. And so she'd been married to him as long as I've been alive, right? I'm like knocking on 50's
Hmm.
door. So they'd been married for 40 years. And all of a sudden she loses my dad and now she's single. And I'll tell you what, it was kind of hard for me when she started dating and getting back out there. Cause then I started thinking, oh my God, does that mean she's gonna have sex? And it's like, it just felt uncomfortable. And I think I heard you say your kids kind of wig out too when they hear about
Well,
what.
I don't have children,
Oh,
but certainly my
yes, yes.
um,
Younger.
yeah, well, family members have
Yes.
never been interested in reading my work. Let me put it that way.
Right, right, right. I think that's who you were talking about. Yeah, they're just like, oh gosh, please don't tell us. So yeah, and I realize now, she's human. My mom is human, and even though she's, about your age, she still wants to have a boyfriend and enjoy life, and so she should. And so now I've changed, and I understand now.
Well, I'm glad your reaction was really normal, and I would love for people who feel that way to look at that and to say to themselves, "Where did I get the idea
Yeah.
that sex has an expiration date?
Yep.
Where did I get the idea that someone 20, 30 years older than I am cannot still be sexual? Where did that come from? And does that serve me? Does that idea serve me?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we were brought up with all sorts of notions that we've rejected, right?
Right.
We've decided, I don't care if I was taught that. It's not for me anymore. It's not how I'm going to live my life. Well, let's look ahead. If we're lucky, we'll all get old. If we're
Yeah.
unlucky, we'll die young.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, do we want to be sexual when we're older? Or do we want to say, "Oh, well, I'll be alive, but I won't be doing that"?
Yeah. And
Why not?
that would be a shame. And I'm also guilty of the fact that, and I'll admit this too, is I thought differently from a male point of view, being older than a woman's point of view. And as I started to really think about it, Joan, I thought, okay, so men don't. Like they can be 75, 80 years old or taking Cialis or Viagra or any other, drug that might keep their stamina and they stay sexually active. I mean, I've heard of 80-year-old men still having children, you know what I mean? So
Hmm.
why did I look at men as men being okay to continue this at 80? But yet when I think of a woman, it's like, ooh, like I'm cringing or, that kind of thing. So I had to also kind of look at my thoughts about that and really kind of
Yeah.
take a moment and say, well, now, why was that? Why was that okay? Why did you understand that better than you did a woman?
Did you figure that out?
Well, I think it's just probably because of what I've heard, in the media, with Cialis and Viagra and all these different drugs. I guess I kind of looked at it as older men using these drugs and being with younger women and not really looking, you know what
Ah,
I mean? And not really looking at the fact that, there could be women who are 75 and 80 years old, and although there's no Viagra or Cialis, or maybe there is, I don't know, that I know of, that for them to increase their libido or whatever, that it still can happen both ways. It still can
May
happen
I
both ways.
bust a big misconception right now?
Yes, absolutely. That's what this show's about.
Okay.
Yeah.
The big misconception is that sex equals intercourse,
Yes.
otherwise known as you know, but your listeners may not, PIV, meaning penis and vagina.
Mm-hmm.
There is much more to sex than PIV. And
Yes.
as we get older, we may have things that interfere with penetrative sex being possible or comfortable for either party.
Mm-hmm.
And that does not mean that sex is over. It just means that we expand our repertoire and we look at other ways that we can be passionate, that we can pleasure ourselves and another, that we can give and receive sensation, that we can give and receive orgasms. We figure out what those other ways are, and there are resources such as, let's see what, my books that that will help you
Yes.
look at that. I even have a webinar titled "Great Sex Without Penetration." It's an hour and a half of why we might want to explore other options and what these options are.
Yeah. Okay.
Because if we get let go of that idea that sex has to be a hard penis and a willing vagina, if we let go of that and we say instead, sex is anything that brings pleasurable
Pleasure.
erotic sensation, then oh my goodness, how the world opens up.
Yes. And so we're going to get into that. We are going to get into that. So I'm hoping that for this show anyway, that there could be somebody listening out there. First of all, we're breaking down some barriers or some stereotypes, right? We're breaking into some of these societal thoughts and views about sex and seniors, number one. Number two, I'm hoping that maybe if there's a senior who's listening who kind of has, like we were talking about earlier, Joan, has thought maybe that this is not for her, or she's, that part of her life is over, that maybe we sort of inspire her or re-stimulate some things, or make her kind of think differently. And so I'm hoping that this
Well, I
show can
hope
do that.
so.
Yeah.
I'm all about opening up minds. And if someone is thinking, I don't want to have sex anymore, then if instead of just making that a blatant statement that says, therefore, no more discussion, if instead they say, I don't want to have sex anymore because, and then what is it that is not pleasurable anymore, not comfortable, or not exciting anymore? If we look at that and then we address those things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not saying that people who have said, I'm done with sex, I'm not saying, well, I'm going to sit right here until you change your mind. I don't do that.
Right.
But what I do is respond if either that person says, I don't know why I don't want sex anymore. I don't know how to, this is a source of conflict with my partner, or the partner, this is most often, the partner writes me, my spouse does not want to have sex anymore with me. It's killing me.
Yeah.
And I don't want anyone else. I want this person that I love. What'll I do?
Yeah.
I get these questions all the time.
Yeah, yeah. And so I know I've looked at some of your videos and some of your writings and everything, and I know that you've mentioned kind of that, sex at 60, 70, and 80 may not be like it was when you were younger. However, you're of the thought that in some ways though, it can be even more satisfying. Is that right? And why do you say that?
Yes.
Yes. Why do you say that?
Oh, yes. Because we are different people now. We know ourselves. We know what we want, what we like, not just in sex, but in our lives. And many of us, I wish I could say all, but I will say many or maybe most of us, when we get to be this age being whatever the over 50, 60, 70 and beyond that you might be, that you've maybe let go of things that don't please you anymore, that just hold you back, that you don't want to do anymore. And you're more open to things that you do want to do. I hear from people who say this is the best sex of my life because it's not rushed, There's a lot more concentration on the other person's pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, my partner is giving me more pleasure.
Ah,
There's, yeah, there's more of we both need a longer arousal time. So we build that in. We have fewer goals in sex. It's just what can we do to pleasure each other? Let's try this. Let's try that. People are also a little more open to exploring their fantasies that
mm,
maybe they tamped down before because they thought, no, I'm not supposed to think this or want this. Or maybe it's even something new that
yes.
where they're saying, for example, I need more sensation now because it's harder for me to feel things. That's one of the common things that happens. Need more sensation. And I'll try stronger sex toys. Whoa, I never did that before. Or even, let's play with some other ways for some sensation play.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are saying, let's role play some situations, or even let's try a different relationship model.
Mm,
So
okay.
a lot of things are changing that
Yes.
you may not realize unless someone is confiding in you. Also, one thing that really helps us as we get older is that we know how to talk more. We understand better how to communicate.
Yes.
This is still super hard for people who grew up in the era that I did, where we were taught not only not to talk about sex, but supposedly not to think about it. Look how well that worked.
Right.
and, and but for many of us, we've practiced communicating. We may be lucky enough to have a partner who understands us, and we can communicate more easily with that person. Or maybe we're willing to work a little harder at it. So
Okay.
there's so many ways that sex can be better than ever.
Even more satisfying. Well, that's great. That's great. And so I'm sure we're going to talk more about it because next I want to get into some of the statistics on sexually transmitted diseases. I know we're not going to get too deep into this because we don't want to, as you say, sound preachy or anything like that, but just to share a little bit about sexually transmitted diseases among seniors. Because I think a few years ago, I remember, and this was when my mom was starting to date, and I was really concerned because I was hearing that a lot of seniors were getting sexually transmitted diseases because of re-entering into the dating scene, right? And starting
Yes.
to starting to have sex. So do you have a little bit of those statistics that you know of today, how that kind of
Oh, I would
stands?
have had them at my fingers if I'd
That's all right.
known you'd want them.
That's all
But
right.
let me summarize it this way.
Yeah.
The STI rate has been growing hugely among the senior population,
Mm-hmm.
precisely because we don't think we need to use barrier protection.
Yeah.
We think, well, I can't get pregnant anymore.
Right.
And this guy I'm dating, he says he doesn't have any STIs, and why shouldn't I believe him? It's not a matter of trusting someone. A lot of people who do have STIs aren't aware they do, and many who have them don't tell the truth. And if
Right.
somebody is eager to get into your pants, it's possible you will not hear something truthful. Just happens that way. My advice, instead of trying to juggle the odds, is just to decide safer sex, barrier protection with everyone every time until such time that I am in a monogamous relationship that's going long term. We've been together 3 to 6 months and we both get tested.
Yeah.
Until then, enjoy sex. Oh, for heaven's sakes, do whatever you please. But please protect yourself with barrier protection.
Yep.
And I'd love for everyone to watch that video that you mentioned. It's
Yeah.
called
Safer
Safer
sex.
Sex for Seniors with
Yeah.
Joan Price. It's on YouTube. It runs 45 minutes, and it is all about why we should use barrier protection, what these things are. I show them. We have a lot of fun with them. I put a dental dam on my face and then try to talk. That doesn't work too well. And
Yeah.
I show people how to put a condom on a flaccid penis,
Right.
which many people use as an excuse it can't be done. Oh, yeah, it can. It's easy. And I think you'll find it fun, and I hope then leave with the information.
Well, I want to give them a little teaser here because I'd like us to, just in case there are people who are listening, again, Joan, somebody like my mom who's been with my dad at that time for over 40 something years, she probably didn't use, protection. So there's a lot of stuff on the horizon now or things that are being used that maybe she just doesn't even really know about. And so I want to touch on just a few of those items that you mentioned in your Safer Sex video. So like you talked about using gloves and you did mention about the condoms and cock rings and even kind of figuring out, penis sizes for condoms. And you showed a little way of being able to determine the size. Um, you mentioned the dental dam and the female condom. Those are all, things that are being used. So I just want to touch on, since you already mentioned the dental dam, why don't you talk about that, what that is and how it's used?
Sure. Dental dam is a protective for cunnilingus, for giving oral sex to a vulva.
Mm-hmm.
And a dental dam, because the name will, of course, make you think of your dentist office. So think about that.
Right.
And when you had to have, for example, a filling done, or you had this stretchy latex thing to protect your tongue, right? And to isolate the one tooth the dentist was working on.
Right.
Well, the dental dams are named after that, although the ones we buy now are really made for sex. They are square or rectangular strips, usually of latex, though they can be of other materials, that you put over the vulva
Mm-hmm.
and hold it down with a finger at each corner. And then you can very safely give the delights of cunnilingus
Okay.
to a vulva owner.
Okay.
Many, many people don't know this exists. Most people do not bother to use it. But, when you think about it, if you really want to be super safe,
Yes.
this is a good way to do it.
Absolutely. Now, there are some women that may experience some dryness, right? So, would they use sort of a lubricant
Yes,
before putting the dental dam on? Maybe
yes,
use some lubricant under there and then put the dental dam on, and then that way it can be more pleasurable. Is that how
exactly.
it's used?
You'd put plenty of water-based lubricant. Well, actually, you could use either water-based um, or silicone lubricant to go with dental dams,
Yes.
because if they are latex, they are damaged by oil, so you don't want to use coconut oil or something like that, but they are not in any way affected by silicone or water-based lubricant. So you would use plenty of that for comfort, because this latex strip is going to, with a tongue on top of it, is going to be sliding around your clitoris. So you
Yes.
don't want it tugging, which it would be if you were dry and there was nothing between you and the dental dam.
Yeah.
So yes, you would put on the lubricant first, and then the dental dam, and then it is actually easier if the receiver, the person who is receiving cunnilingus, holds the dental dam in place,
I see.
and that leaves the giver to do nothing but figure out how to give you the most pleasure possible.
All right. All right. Well, that sounds good. Okay. So, next, something that maybe is people haven't heard of because maybe it's not used as much anyway. I don't know. Female condoms. I think I heard you say something about that maybe they used to be sold kind of over the counter, but now you have to get a prescription for it. So, can you,
That's right.
yeah. So, can you talk about the female condom and how that works and how it
Yeah.
looks and all of that good stuff?
It's hard to describe, but I'm going to do my very best, and you let me know how well I'm doing.
Great. Great.
So imagine, instead of the kind of condom that fits over a penis, imagine a sort of condom shaped but much larger tube
Mm-hmm.
that fits inside the vagina.
Okay.
And there's a ring small ring at the bottom end that holds it in place against the cervix, pretty much the way our old-fashioned diaphragms used to fit. if
Okay.
any of us remember that. And then the tube is large enough that it emerges out of the vagina, and the part extending to outside has a large ring so that it fits. Um, it's just held against the vulva, making a tunnel for the penis to go in. Does that make any sense?
Yes, yes, I'm following you. Yeah.
So the vagina is wearing this condom. The penis can enter it, or fingers can enter it, anything you want. And it's a really marvelous, first of all, because the vulva owner can insert it before sex, doesn't have to wait till you're in the middle of things and have to stop and do it. You can do it way in advance. And then the other wonderful thing about it is that since aging penises have erectile difficulties, sometimes the erections are hard enough for penetration, but then they don't last or they come and go. Well, it doesn't matter with this because nothing's going to slip off the penis because the penis isn't wearing it. The penis is free, is
Yes.
unclad to just go in and out of this protected tunnel.
Yes. Okay.
It's a cool thing.
It
It's called a female condom, but it's really the sex educators prefer to call it the receptive condom, or because it can be used anally. It doesn't have to be a female using it.
Okay. All right. Well, this sounds really good. I guess it was news to me though that you now have to have a prescription for it, and I know you kind of talked about the. That's unfortunate because the awkwardness of having to discuss as a senior with your doctor the fact that you need this female condom. You
Well,
kind of talked about, yeah.
I think we should talk to our doctors about still being sexual.
Yes.
I think we should make that really clear whether or not we need help about that. I think we just need to make that clear. Look, doctor, I am a sexual being, and there are times that I'm going to ask you for advice on the sexual nature. And if that makes you go, you, then let me know and I'll get someone else.
Right. Right.
No, I
Right.
think it has to be that clear. But as far as the problems with it being prescription, they there's only one company making this, or at least as far as I know, there's only one company making it. And they said they went to a prescription model so that it would be cheaper for people because instead of having to shell out the bucks over the counter, that it would be maybe covered by Medicare. Um, but I don't know how that's working out. And it seems that anything you put in the way of people using barrier protection, the more problematic it becomes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure we've given enough information. People can ask about it and talk to their doctors about it. So I'm just glad we were able to just talk about it and
Hmm.
share. Yeah, and
Absolutely.
yeah, and so lastly, because they'll have to look at the video so they can see more. But
Yes.
the last thing I want to touch on is the soft penis because like you
Yes.
said, as men age, there is a more chances that the blood flow into the penis might be a little bit more challenged. And so putting on a condom for a penis that is a little bit softer, you actually talk about how to do this. And I thought it was pretty cool.
Not only talk about it,
You show.
I do a demo. Now, I'm not doing it on an actual live penis.
Right,
I'm
right.
doing it on well, you'll see when you look at it.
Yes, yes,
You'll
yes.
see what I use.
Yes.
I didn't want to use a dildo because the dildos are hard,
Right.
but I did, as those of you who haven't watched it yet will see. I used it on what's called a soft packer, which is let's call it a model of a flaccid penis, which is, well, I'll just say that much, a model of a flaccid penis. And I show how to do this with a trick that I was taught that is really easy to do, but I'm not going to give it away because I really want people to watch it.
That's right. That's right. Okay.
Safer Sex for Seniors with Joan Price.
Yes. All right. So see there, you got to go to YouTube, put that in the little search glass there, and then you'll see Joan and it'll come up. So Joan, lastly, before we go, You talk about how important it is to, have the kissing and the sexy talk and the oral stimulation, like either before or during sex, and how important it is. So, can you share with seniors or just with the audience in general who are learning why this is so? Why is it so important?
Um, so many reasons. One is that we need much more arousal than we used to, and that arousal can come in many different ways. Um, our sexual sensations may not just come from one kind of activity. We may need to explore the different things that turn us on. And since we are taking the goals out of sex, as I mentioned before, it might not be that penetrative sex is what brings us to orgasm. It may be something entirely different. It may be a well-placed vibrator on the clitoris. It may be a vibrator plus a finger inside the vagina. It may be a well-placed sex toy on the penis. It may be oral sex for any genital. It may be manual. It may be it may be a combination of things. So instead of just saying, okay, what do I need to do in order to get you ready for intercourse? Let's just take that off the table and explore what else might work.
Uh-huh.
We can always put intercourse back in.
Yes.
But in order to figure out what really works for us, let's just take that away for a while and see what else we can do. It
Explore.
could be very revealing.
Yes. All right. Great, great, great. Speaking of revealing, as we are getting ready to come to a close, let's reveal once again how people can see your articles, things that you've read, your blog, video, YouTube, all of that, your book.
www.joanprice.com will give you everything.
All right. Well, I tell you what, thank you so much, Joan, for coming on for part 1 of this episode. I just can't wait to talk with you again, but I have enjoyed having you. So thanks so much.
My pleasure, Tina. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Well, listeners, you heard it. We are going to be back. Joan Price is coming back. We will continue this discussion. But for now, thank you for having listened to the Lovers Lounge podcast, where we talk to experts and other guests on topics related to love, relationships, and sex. I am, of course, your host, Tina Love. And until next time, peace. And of course, don't you forget, love.